than just retire, and partly out of necessity, will be entering new fields and starting new businesses and living out their dreams in a way that we haven't seen earlier generations.
I so hope that's true. How are Generation Jonesers doing as parents? It seems to me they have truly, by using the years that you mentioned from 54 to 65, they've gotten past a lot of old anchors that used to weigh us down, the whole racism and gender stereotypes and sexual identity. It's like it doesn't bother them at all. They're way past that.
Well, there's definitely qualitative differences between Jonesers' attitudes on social issues like that and previous generations. And of course, what you find, like the offspring of Generation Jones, primarily Generation Yers, today's 20-somethings, are even more tolerant of, you know, alternative sexual and racial, et cetera. But I do think that the impact on Gen Y, which has gotten a lot of attention in this last year, partly because of Obama's election, of course, Gen Y had a big impact on that. Although they didn't vote really in significantly larger numbers than they had in previous generations. Many people think Gen Y voted in huge numbers in November '08. They didn't, but they volunteered in huge numbers, and they just generally impacted that election, certainly in a big way.
They were certainly vocal, and politicians respond to the most noise sometimes, and certainly President Obama seemed to answer a calling, even if it was ill-defined. Well, what about, what are they going to do with this quality education that they did in fact have, even though it was kind of the end of America's dominance as a preeminent educational country? They got a pretty good education, and for the most part they were eating 3 squares a day. What are they going to do with this once they've put the money issue aside? You know, they've made their careers. Do you think they're going to be as inventive as we hope they will be?
I mean, based on what we've seen so far from this generation, they've been very inventive, very creative, in some ways had to. This is a generation that, you know, was given these huge promises and then found this very different reality, and so Jonesers had to learn the value of compromise, of self-reliance. I mean, this is a generation that kind of, in part because as Jonesers went into their teens and then came of age, that corresponded with a huge increase in the 1970s of divorce, of moms entering the workforce outside the home. Jonesers were the first generation of latchkey kids, and so Jonesers have had to depend on themselves, and I think in some ways that certainly was difficult, but it also created and forged a character in this generation that I think is going to benefit them as they get older. And I think Jonesers, you know, from what we've seen, you know, Jonesers rank highest in entrepreneurialism among all generations.
That's a good thing.
I agree, and I think we'll see even more of that now as Jonesers. I mean, we're going to see far more senior entrepreneurs among Generation Jones than we've seen in previous generations. And I touched upon it before. I think it's really important and worth noting, again, is this idealism that Jonesers bring to the table. I think this is a generation that, when you think back of what it was like to be a child in the 60s when we had such huge dreams nationally, that Jonesers had it stoked into them at such a young formative age that there's this real craving to make that political difference, to bring some of those dreams to fruition. And I think, you know, at the time of Obama's victory last year, I mean, I was getting thousands of emails a week, unsolicited, from Jonesers that were really responding to this guy and relating to him partly because he's one of us. You know, finally, Generation Jones has a president. And I think that idealism already is translating into lots of things that really benefit the culture generally. And I think now that Jonesers are really taking over the levers of control of politics, of business. You know, we have right now a meeting of the G20 leaders. 2/3 of the G20, over 2/3 of NATO leaders, 2/3 of the European Union leaders are part of Generation Jones. So all of a sudden, we've got a new generation. And really, over just the last 2 to 3 years, we've had this transition from a world dominated by baby boom leadership now to Generation Jones leadership.
You brought something up. I'm going to follow up on this.
Please.
How do people get in contact with you? Let's see, a website, email, telephone. Lay it out for us, please.
Thanks. They can find me online, generationjones.com. They can email me directly at jp@jonathanpontel.com. They can call my group at 310-854-2000, and we're involved in lots of different, you know, part of what we do is just sort of spreading the word of Jones. And so I'm brought in as an advisor to political campaigns. I'm nonpartisan. Last election I was brought in by both Republicans and Democrats.
Fantastic.
Business, we do a lot of stuff with marketing and targeting, and a lot now in the aging industry, trying to do the long-term strategic planning that needs to happen now. Not when Jonesers are 70, But now, looking ahead, we've got a huge group that's qualitatively different in their cultural...
Right.
This is the time to look at figuring out how to develop products and housing and how you're going to market that. Now's the time. It's a huge opportunity in the aging business.
Okay, and for those of you out there who have shared this entrepreneurial spirit we're talking about, it's important to get informed on this, because this is not something that's going to go away. These people are here. So generationjones.com, you got that. And the email again was JP at...
My direct email is jp@jonathanpontel.com, and
Right.
people are happy to receive emails.
Okay, and the phone number is 310...
310-854-2000.
Right.
And we welcome calls.
And, you know, I think there are opportunities here that are going to surprise all of us. Maybe some solutions that look like a neighborhood organization and yet have national implications. Because it seems to me these youngsters, and I have a couple of kids in this age range here, who they're very connected and yet very individualistic as well, but they love to work in groups.
Mm-hmm. That's right, and in some ways you put your finger on a very interesting point there, that Jonesers in a number of ways have this sort of fundamental duality to their personality by coming of age on the cusp of two very different eras.
Right.
And so there is this sense of individuality and sense of community within the same generation.
Do you think that's going to hold true with their spiritual values as well? I mean, are they going to have that solid spiritual core that can sustain them when times get tough? Because we can bet on times getting tough.
Sure. I mean, so far, if you look throughout the Generation Jones life cycle, it has. And Jonesers were, you know, on one hand, came of age during a time when the institutions of organized religion really were crumbling and losing a lot of this sort of institutional credibility they have. At the same time, in the 60s and 70s, there was this broad sense of spirituality in the zeitgeist that really influenced Generation Jonesers.
We could talk about this much, much more, Jonathan, but sadly our time is up for today's program. Thanks to our guest, author and cultural historian, Jonathan Pontel. And now, it's time for today's Senior Stat Shot. Today, let's look at some generation preferences among baby boomers, Generation Xers, and those in the middle, members of Generation Jones. If you think of large music events, baby boomers will recollect Woodstock, Generation X, Lollapalooza, and Generation Jones, Live Aid. When it comes to wars, baby boomers think of the Vietnam War, Generation Xers, the Persian Gulf War, and Generation Jones members relate to Star Wars. Thinking of computer products, baby boomers prefer IBM, Generation Xers, Microsoft, and Generation Jones members like Apple products. And favorite songs. All You Need Is Love is a favorite of baby boomers. Generation Xers, Smells Like Teen Spirit. And members of Generation Jones listen to Born to Run. One more generational preference when it comes to American cities. San Francisco is a baby boomer favorite. Generation Xers like Seattle. And Austin, Texas is the preferred destination for members of Generation Jones. And that's today's Senior Stat Shot. The Los Angeles Department of Aging produces this program with CityView Channel 35, so that seniors living in Los Angeles and surrounding communities are well informed on the many issues that face them in everyday life. And also to let you know of the many services that the Department of Aging offers our senior citizens. Now, we'd like to hear from you with comments on the program, what you like, what you think can be improved, and ideas for future programs. So give us a call. The number is on your screen, area code 213-252-4088. That's 213-252-4088. Call us with your comments and ideas. We look forward to hearing from you. I'm Paul Peterson for the Los Angeles Department of Aging, the people here at CityView Channel 35, and all of our guests on Aging in LA. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Jonathan, thank you. It was good.
is CityView Channel 35. Your city, your channel.
morning, ladies and gentlemen, and we do have a quorum, so Mr. Clerk, if you'll please call the roll for this meeting of the Los Angeles City Council for Wednesday, the 7th of July, 2010.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Hahn, Weezer, Koretz, Krikorian, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weston, Zine, Garcetti. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, and welcome to members of the public who are here, our viewers on Channel 35, any of the folks at our remote facilities in San Pedro and Van Nuys, as well as those watching through the internet or listening through their telephones. For your convenience, we offer all these ways to watch your city council in action and to follow the issues of the day that are important to you and to your communities. So thank you very much for tuning in this morning. If we can go to the first order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Zine moves and Mr. Wesson seconds. Without objection, those will be approved. Next order of business.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Reyes moves and Mr. Parks seconds. Without objection, those will be approved as well. If we can run through the agenda, please. Colleagues, if you can direct your attention, we'll go through the items on today's agenda.
First item on the agenda, item 1, is confirmation of assessment for the Cartwright Avenue sewer improvement. Notice for public hearing. Council should close the public hearing and confirm the assessment.
Okay, there are no cards on this. We'll close the public hearing. If anybody does not wish to call this special, let's go ahead and open the roll on the assessment, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Items 2 through 4 are street vacation items. Notice for public hearing. Council should close the public hearings and instruct the city engineer to proceed. And there is a card on item 3.
Okay, on number 2, sorry, did we pass on number 2?
No, that is
Okay.
items 2 through 4, and there's
Gotcha.
a card on 3.
And on number 2, Mr. Rosendahl is in Council District 11. Did you want to move approval in Council District 11? Okay, sorry, my bad. It's coming up on Friday, Mr. Rosendahl. If we can go ahead then, if there's nothing special besides 3, any other specials? And there's a move to receive and file 6, 9, and...
Mr. President, we're actually only in 2 through 4 right
Okay.
now.
I think I might have the wrong sheet here, too. Let's go ahead then on 2 through 4, call 3 special for cards, and can we please open the roll on 2 and 4, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
All right, those are approved. Next items, please.
Items 5 through 10 are building and safety liens. Notice for public hearing. The department reports that items 6, 9, and 10 can be received and filed in as much as the liens have been paid or there has been an ownership change.
Okay, and we do have a card on number 8. We'll call that special for a card from the public. If no objection, we'll move to receive and file 6, 9, and 10 in so much as those have been paid. Anybody wishing to call 5 or 7 special? We'll close the public hearings on those. And please open the roll on the balance, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, those are approved. Next items, please.
Items 11 through 35 are items for which public hearings have been held. Items 12 through 17 are commission reappointments. Do you wish to hold those on the desk?
Yes, let's hold the commission reappointments on the desk and welcome
there is-
our commissioner nominees.
And there is no action required on item 11 today.
Okay, any other, so we'll take no action on 11. Any other specials, Mr. Rosendahl?
19 and 35 together.
Okay, 19 and 35, and let's hold 18 on the desk until we have 12 members since it's an ordinance. If there are no other specials, 20 through 34, let's go ahead and take up that balance. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please. Yes, Mr. Parks?
3 through 26 forthwith, there's accrual interest on those issues.
Okay. Without objection, we'll send those forthwith. Next items, please.
Items 36 through 40 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, if there's no objection to consideration, we have those items before us. Mr. Labange?
Council, on item 40, last Friday, it was Chuck Berry Day. Chuck Berry arrived in Los Angeles. He was very pleased and thankful for the recognition as one of the greatest artists of all in rock and roll, including his very famous song, Promised Land, which describes his trip to Los Angeles. Thank you. Chuck Berry Day
He
in Los
enjoyed
Angeles.
his time at Hollywood?
He enjoyed his time in your district, Mr.
Excellent.
Garcetti. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing him there, Mr. Labange. With that, we do have cards on 37 and 38. We'll call those special for cards from the public and close the other hearings. If there's no other specials, let's go ahead and take up that balance. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those are approved. Closed session items are next, and Mr. Parks, you recommended that we move those in open session?
Yeah, I would recommend that we move all these items. 41 through 45 are workers' comp cases. 46 is a liability case that city's at fault, and there's no other recommendation.
Okay. Does anybody wish to call those special for closed session? If not, we'll take the recommendations if we can walk through those. Mr. City Attorney? Or Mr. Clerk?
On item 41, there's a recommendation for a stipulated award in the amount of $147,217.50, plus a life pension estimated at $68,388.40 in the case of Winston Spencer versus City.
Thank you. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
Next item, please. That is approved.
Item 42, there's a recommendation for a stipulated award in the amount of $599,544.40 in the case of Linda Hernandez-Jones versus City.
All right. Let's go ahead and open the roll on this settlement, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 eyes.
That is approved. Next item.
Item 43, there's a recommendation for a stipulated award in the amount of $135,351.88 in the case of Fred Folks versus City.
Okay. Let's please go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 eyes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
On item 44, there's a recommendation for a stipulated award in the amount of $307,706.58 in the case of Michael Crandell versus City.
All right. If nobody wishes to speak on that, let's go ahead, open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 eyes.
That is approved as well. Thank you. Next item.
Item 45, there's a recommendation to authorize the city attorney to settle through a compromise and release in the amount of $125,000 in the case of Thomas Rader versus City.
Okay. Let's go ahead on that item. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 eyes.
That is approved as well. Next item.
On item 46, there's a recommendation for settlement in the amount of $102,223.20 in the case of Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority versus City and Vincent Arrington versus City.
Okay. Let's go ahead and open the roll on 46, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 eyes.
All right. That is approved as well. Last item, please.
On the continuation agenda, item 47 is an item for which public hearing has not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay. If there's no objection, we'll go ahead and consider that and call that special for Mr. Weezer. And as is our custom, we'll take up the commissioners, and then we'll go to general public comment. So I'd like to take up the first batch together, which is items, I think, 12, 13, 14, and 15 together. And I'd like to recognize the chair of our Housing, Community, Economic Development Committee, Mr. Wesson, if nominees would like to come forward to the table here. Thank you all for offering your time and your service. Mr. Wesson.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. These are reappointments. Each one of these individuals have served on this committee before. Mr. Alarcon and I met with them this morning to discuss a variety of things, even the destination of famous NBA basketball player LeBron James. So we had a very long and detailed discussion. Jeff has been the chair for 7 years, and again, Mr. Alarcon and I were very impressed. I would like to ask the council if they would please consider just moving the item, because they've been here all day and they do have other things to do. So I would request, unless there was some very critical questions, since this is not an appointment, that it's a reappointment, that we just move this. So I would ask for an aye vote.
Okay. Would the commissioners or the nominees like to, some are commissioners, some are nominees, like to say anything briefly to people of Los Angeles about your service? Are you good? Okay.
Only if there's any questions for us.
All right. Any questions, colleagues, for the nominees? If not, let's go ahead and make this official then. Let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 eyes.
Thank you very much again for all your hard work, and congratulations to each of you. And please continue to reach out to us as a resource. And thank you very much, Mr. Wesson. Our next nominees are for the Board of Airport Commissioners, items number 16 and 17, if we can ask our esteemed guests to join us at the table. And I'd like to recognize the chair of our TCT committee, Ms. Hahn.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, we have two returning members of the Airport Commission, Walt Zifkin being the longest, having served since 2004, and Joseph Aretas, who is been appointed to represent the Van Nuys Airport area. We had a very good discussion in our committee this morning, and mainly, and I would like for both of you maybe to respond separately. I basically asked sort of overreaching general questions about what do they see as the major challenges as we go forward at LAX in terms of security and modernization. We talked about obviously a general feeling of what we're trying to do out there at the airport with the new concessions package, which they're, of course, recused from acting on, which is why it's coming to the Board of Referred Powers, but still wanted a general kind of a weighing in on their opinion. We talked about the airport being an economic engine and how we can leverage our ability for good jobs, leverage policies that Los Angeles feels important about, like minority and women-owned businesses being connected to contractors at the airport. We talked about the living wage requirement that we've increased for airport workers to allow them to purchase health care, and what difference that made in terms of security, loyalty, longevity, as we balanced out with airlines issues with does that make them more or less competitive, and we talked about modernizing the customs area. So maybe just both of you could touch on some of the things that we talked about in committee, talk about why you want to do this thankless job, why you're willing to serve, and really give us a perspective on where we're going in the future with our airport in terms of these issues that we talked about. And again, personally from me, I want to thank both of you for agreeing to serve. I think we've done great at the airport. We have seen progress. We are moving forward on modernization, but I think we're always at a point where we need to continue to be vigilant on pressing forward on the issues that I think are so important.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Hahn. And first of all, let me say that it's a pleasure to be here, and it's a privilege and an honor to serve on the Airport Commission. I was originally appointed in 2004 by Mayor Hahn and reappointed by Mayor...
Microphone a little bit, or let's have a little more sound.
Is this good?
Very.
Okay. By Mayor Hahn, reappointed by Mayor Villaraigosa in 2005, and now I'm before you again. Los Angeles International Airport is a natural gateway on the West Coast to the United States by air. And we have been the preeminent airport in this part of the country, and a preeminent airport in the United States altogether and in the world. We're the largest origination and destination airport in the country. But we can't take that for granted. And especially with new large aircraft, there will be the ability for airlines to miss us if we are not attractive and competitive to them and their passengers. So the major issues facing us, I think, as Councilwoman Hahn has said, safety and security is always preeminent. I think we are doing a very good job. I think the airport is safe and secure, but we must remain vigilant and we must remain proactive and ahead of the bad guys. The modernization of the airport, you all know, has been a major issue. Thanks to the mayor, thanks to Councilwoman Hahn, thanks to the committee, the Commerce and Tourism Committee, and this council, and my fellow commissioners, and the great staff that we have at the airport, headed by Gina Marie Lindsay. We are making major strides. You know, we had the Southfield Improvement Project. We have the Tibbet modernization, remodel, and now the Bradley West terminal to bring new gates, new shopping, a brand new $1.5 billion building to the airport. So doing all that and having it be a good place for people to work while we remain competitive, having attractive concessions. You asked in committee about concessions, and we can't comment on what's coming before the Board of Referred Powers, but in general, the concessions at LAX need to be rehabilitated, as the airport needs to be rehabilitated, and together we're in the process of doing that, to have concessions that reflect Los Angeles, that make people know that they're in Los Angeles, and that give people the things that they need in a way that's appealing.
Thank you.
How do I follow that? I'd like to focus in on what Councilwoman Hahn talked about on living wage. There are a number of workers at LAX who, prior to what you did and the actions you took here, didn't have health coverage. And now they do, and they have the opportunity to have health coverage. One of the problems that has existed at the LAX was the fact of high turnover in workers. Workers who were really good workers, who were trained, who had to go out and get different jobs so they could find coverage for their families. Commissioner Velasco recently returned from a trip to Europe, and she brought up the fact that one of the criticisms that was made particularly by the British people, was the fact that the new ordinance that we passed with regards to the living wage was burdensome on them cost-wise. And I really stopped to think about that for a moment, and what really hit me is the fact that in Britain they do have a universal health coverage program. Right. They don't have to worry about people who don't have coverage. And so that's the difference here. And if that ever happens here, then perhaps that'll more than level the playing field. I'm committed to another 5 years as a commissioner, or whatever term it lasts. And one of the reasons I accepted is we've started a number of projects, and I want to be there through their finish. We're very proud of the work we've done. And the other thing that I really like about our particular commission is the fact that while we may not always agree about everything, we have a great commission, we get along, and we find a way to work things out. And with your support and the support of the city, we'll continue doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have Mr. Rosendahl as our next speaker, then Mr. Cardenas and Mr. Labange. Mr. Rosendahl.
Good morning, Mr. President. Thank you for that. Good morning, gentlemen. Good to see you. First of all, you know, the big deal for us is the North Side land use plan. It's at 340 acres. There's been tons of different community meetings. My dream is to get it done in the next few years. What's the status of that right now?
Go. I go first? Okay.
Either one, I don't care.
Well, I know we have a staff person dedicated to working on that. I believe the staff is committed to coming up with a plan for that acreage within the next few years. I think 2013 has been the date mentioned, and we're committed to it. I think we all want to see a plan that will be compatible with the residents of Westchester and do right by the city.
Okay, that's the key to me. My next question, when you just asked this one, Joe, is that whole Manchester Square business. It's all fenced up now, green grass there. I was thinking of some cars and campers maybe, but of course that's lava land and this and that. So what becomes of that?
Well, we have been working on that, as you know, for a number of years, and ever since I've been on the commission, and probably prior to that. Where we're at now is there's still a number of parcels that have not been purchased, and one of the things that has stopped that progress is the fact that with the change in the economy and the prices of real estate, the monies that were probably could have been offered at one time has really changed. The price of those properties and the value of them has gone down. Right. Our aim is to one day hopefully have a off-site parking system where people can be transferred and have that whole area developed. But for now, it's a work in progress, and it will get completed.
Okay, the green light projects, which you all played a major role in, were 5 of them. One is the Bradley modernization. We're about $900 million into that one. It's almost done. That'll be done by the beginning of 2013. Am we right on that one?
Correct. Bradley West is $1.5 billion.
Yeah.
And it'll be done by 2013.
Okay. It'll end up $1.5 billion for that. Then we have the People Mover.
By the way, if I could, that's 4,000 jobs.
Not only 4,000 jobs, but it's LEED certified. I was very happy when it early came in my beginning in this council. They didn't even deal with that. I pushed them back till they came back and they redid it, and now we got a nice stamp of LEED certification for the Tom Bradley Terminal, which is beautiful. What about the People Mover? What's the dates? What's the sense of that? Anybody have any thoughts?
I think
the 5 projects are the Bradley Terminal, the People Mover, the Green Line into the airport, the consolidated rental, and the Midfield Terminal.
I think a lot of those projects are tied to the SPAS process that we're about to embark on.
Yeah.
I mean, the People Mover, has got to be part of an overall future design as we see growth of passenger volume at the airport. We're originally talking about that when we were headed towards 78.9 million passengers a year. Right now we're around 55 or 56 million passengers a year. We've gone backwards since the master plan was developed. So the People Mover is definitely on the drawing boards.
And the Green Line?
And the Green Line, too. We have to work with the
MTA. Regionalism is something I believe in. We have 25 million people from Santa Barbara to San Diego. It's ridiculous to all schlep to LAX and the 405 and all the gridlock in my district. So it's called Ontario, the Maytag man waiting for action. About 5 million takeoffs and landings. It could handle 12 million right now. It'll soon go up to 29 million. As we modernize LAX, those costs get passed on to the airlines. So it will no longer be the cheapest takeoff and landing major airport in America. So I say to United, Delta, and American Airlines, start getting with Ontario nonstop, direct, frequent, and discounted flights out of Ontario. Do you see that happening as we modernize LAX?
Well, I think the landing fees at LAX are higher than the landing fees at Ontario at this point. The problem that I see as a consumer and as a traveler is for a family of 4 to fly out of Ontario, it costs them about $100 more per person. That's an airline issue. And once you label that playing field and you have the prices that are competitive with LAX, you might see more people migrating toward those areas.
You're absolutely right. If American, United, and Delta began to have nonstop, direct, frequent, discounted flights out of Ontario, there is a market from the Inland Empire, from Ventura and Orange County that would prefer to go to Ontario. But we're on track with that as we modernize LAX.
Yes.
Okay, well, listen, thank you both very much for stepping up to the plate again. There's a lot more we can talk about, but we talk about it on a regular basis as we continue this relationship with our city council. Last thing, just in reflective, I know Mr. Cardenas is going to probably get to it, this whole concession business. Any overview comment can you make about that before it comes before our Board of Referred Powers?
Actually, Mr. Rosendahl, I would advise the appointees to refrain and council to refrain from a discussion on that because the board was conflicted out.
Yeah, well, maybe he could say that, right? No?
Maybe I just said it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous that they were all conflicted out, But anyhow, we'll save it for the referred powers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cardenas.
I certainly don't want to get into any discussion of anything that's conflicted out, but one thing's for sure. We do appreciate your volunteer time to be on this very important board. It takes a lot of your volunteer time, so I just wanted to personally thank you on behalf of the people of Los Angeles. You've both been on the board for a number of years. You've both been working with us as a community in the Valley with Van Nuys Airport, and also when it comes to Ontario and LAX, and then that one way out there in the desert, we've had some interest in that airport as well. It takes a lot of responsibility. It's one of the most important, busiest airports in the world, so I just want to thank you for helping keeping it going and doing the job of being the Citizens Board, part of the Citizens Board that oversees our airport system. So just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lavange.
Members of the City Council, Mr. Aretas, a proud graduate of Belmont High, Mr. Zivkin, a proud graduate of Hollywood High, two products of LA Unified of some years ago, great professionals. This commission, and Mr. Rosendahl, I compliment you as the district representative, and Ms. Hahn as the chair, the driving force in so many things. Three things built the city: the Department of Water Power, William Mulholland, Phineas Manning, and the Port of Los Angeles and all those workers around them, and then those who saw the importance of Mines Field. I remember John Farrar showing me the airfield near Atlantic Boulevard and where the Long Beach Freeway is. And then he told me the story how the city grew in 1961 with the International Airport, the phase of the jet age, and so on and so forth. Modernization is so important. I do think, though, Mr. Rosendahl, the regionalism is going to be adjusted to the marketplace. And having the planes have interrelationships, companies, that they want to all kind of arrive at the same place and then disperse through their alliances. Could you explain the alliances a little to us of airlines?
Well, most airlines have groups of other airlines that they're associated with. So as you know, United has Star Alliance.
Right.
And each major carrier is allied with other carriers. And I don't know that plays into regionalism very much. I think the issue of regionalism is one, competition among airlines to reach a marketplace, and they have to define the marketplace. Inland Empire, when I first got on the commission, we were 10 million passengers a year headed to 30. That's what we thought. Right now we're at 7, headed south. So if the Inland Empire resuscitates itself over time, which I believe it will, and if we encourage the airlines, as Councilman Rosendahl has spoken so often about, to try to access that market, eventually that airport will be the relief airport for LAX that it was designed to be, that it's supposed to be.
But all alliances have to have relationships and land near the same airport, if not in the same airport.
Yeah, they need to be where they can transfer passengers. Yes, that's
right. And then Commissioner, the Green Line, where do you think it should go?
I think I told you that this morning. I think it should go right underneath the airport and a place for them to come up, and then you can have the people mover move them all around the different airports, just as they do in some of our more sophisticated airports.
And as the previous meetings, I've asked that a general manager, assistant general manager under Gina Marie's direction be the transportation czar for LAX. I hope that has happened. I don't know if it has happened yet, but that's real important to take advantage. Thank you both. And your alumni associations should be very proud of your contributions to the city. They should have a little sign. Thanks to Hollywood High and Belmont High, you're traveling through LAX.
So let me give you a plug. Thanks to Marshall High also.
Thank you very much. Go Northern League.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, those are the speakers. I want to thank you both personally as well for your extraordinary service and your articulateness on what this airport needs and finally moving things forward. And we all appreciate both of your work very, very much. And thank you for offering to sign up again. I know it's almost a full-time job on top of everything else you do. So we are indebted to you, as should the people of Los Angeles be. And with that, let's go ahead and take a vote on the next 5 years of your life. Please open the roll. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Congratulations again. Thank you
very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
By the way, I'd like to acknowledge my family who all came down this morning for some reason or another.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much for being here as well. Should feel very proud. We'll go to our general public comment now, and our first... I'm sorry.
Mr. President, there are now 12 members. Do you wish to take up the ordinance?
Oh, yeah. Let's go ahead and open the roll on
It was item 18.
Item 18. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
All right. That is approved, and we'll go to our general public comment, and Dr. Clyde Williams is our first speaker as soon as that photo is taken. Thank you, Dr. Williams. And then after that is Armando Herman. Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Williams.
Good morning. Dr. Clyde Williams for 115 Barrett Road, El Sereno, Northeast LA. Tonight there will be about 25 people that will devote about 2 to 3 hours of their life to the Neighborhood Council in El Sereno, LA 32 Neighborhood Council Board meeting tonight. During the last 2 days, there have been other board meetings throughout the city. These are all volunteers, much like the commissioners that you have seen today. However, the public participates more there. The commissions very seldom have any real public participation. Whereas in the neighborhood councils, they see the real people. The small people, as some people would call them, but the real people. So we're quite concerned regarding the neighborhood councils and how they participate with major projects in our areas. Councilmember Hahn, this morning, postponed a decision regarding a consultancy extension. Why? Because even when the courts mandated, the Port of LA and the Environmental Department decided that they didn't have to deal with the public. But these small people are called appellants. And they were supposed to be coordinating with them throughout the EIR process, but they haven't. So now they're going to dump a 6,000-page EIR report on them. However, some of us can read fast, and we will be reviewing that EIR in relationship to public participation and to the piecemealing of the port, the 710 South, and the 710 North.
Thank you very much, Dr. Williams. Mr. Herman? Would you like to come forward? After that will be Arnold Sachs.
Before you start my time, can we get a little more silence from the city attorney's office back here?
Go ahead, please, and start.
My point today is to bring to the attention of LA City Council is this. Why at a time of recession, why at a time of economic crisis, do we continue to exploit the public by waste? Waste in the way we conduct business, waste in the way we provide services. Within CD14, which is known to some of you as Boyle Heights, there's been very much neglect. That neglect comes to down wire lines, sidewalks unprepared, overlapping of slurry seals, and these are within the city departments that are supposed to provide a service, which is to provide the public with access to use them. And so I can't believe reading this paper here, which I don't get in my community anymore because someone has blocked it, but I'm going to state what Ms. Hahn said. We're laying people off. We're cutting services. We're giving raises to 15,000 employees in the worst possible time. Just give 6% raises to all city employees, regardless of unions, regardless of just straight out on the board employees. There has to come a stop to this. There has to be accountability. There has to be efficiencies. The city attorney's office needs to get a hold of itself and apply more pressure on those that are violating the law. Mr. Weezer's office, some of the staff don't know what an ordinance is. It's a law. Very simple. I'm not here to teach anyone anything new. All I'm asking is that City Hall conduct business in the most appropriate manner, the most professional manner, and one set out to protect the public. Your interest should be more involved with the public. And it's a shame that I have to come here and speak on behalf and advocate on behalf of those within our community and those within the city of Los Angeles. And as far as Mayor Villaraigosa, you failed. Thank you.
Arnold Sachs is our next speaker. After that is Walter Bechtel.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Quickly, to clarify the remarks regarding the pay raise that the city just gave the unions, actually the city negotiated those pay raises based on failure. So the fact that they got the pay raises, well, you negotiated them. You negotiated them stating, well, if we have a deficit, and you were in the middle of the second year of deficit, 2 years of deficit, then we'll give you pay raises. So start at that point, not the fact that you gave them the pay raise, the fact that you cut the ERIT program, and exactly how many people were laid off to balance the fiscal year, or is it the budget year? Which one of these bodies are you talking about? But what was also some interesting things. On Friday, Councilman Labange mentioned, you had CAO here, and there was a discussion regarding a waiver, a write-off of the excess fees generated by unpaid parking tickets. And I'd hate to clarify you, Councilman Labange, but I must, because about 2 weeks ago, there was an item that you took on calendar, a motion that was acted on regarding a $19 million write-off that Councilman Parks said wasn't really a write-off. But the action you took was regarding a write-off. So it's the language that's used. You want a write-off? Councilman Parks says it isn't a write-off. How is the public supposed to know? And between the $19 million write-off that wasn't a write-off and the $26 million payout that really wasn't a bonus, that's $45 million that the council has magically made, what, disappear? Incurred its expenses? Somebody answer. Thank you.
Our last speaker is Walter Bechtel.
Good morning. I don't know why I'm having to come in here again. Somebody keeps trying to push me into coming here. Maybe if the city would enforce the housing department rules and regulations, maybe I wouldn't have to come in here. As I understand, they are supposed to conduct periodical checks of all rental units in the building. For some reason, the hotel I'm living in is being exempted from that. It's also a focus of a lot of problems with drugs and alcohol, and has been for a very long time. I don't understand, what is the problem here? How come the Los Angeles Housing Department doesn't check these places out? Is this only for a few people that you're talking about here, or is this for or is it only the projects that you have in mind? The CD14 area includes all the CD14 area, not just the Ford Hotel. So, unless you have a problem with me, and I guess there ain't nothing I can do about that. You're right. If you keep wanting to have somebody blast his music and torture me, there isn't anything about that. The only thing I can do is tell the other people and come before the councils and the supervisors and tell people that this city says they care about its people, but in fact that's only a select few people, and it's hard to tell just exactly who those people are who've been chosen that are going to be the select few. People who protest about the way you've been stealing their intellectual property obviously have been excluded.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. That will close our general public comment. We'll now go to the first item called Special Number 3, and we have a card from the public. I'd like to ask Lonnie Blanchard III to come forward. And this is in Council District 9. Good morning.
Good morning, council members. I am the managing member of an LLC that owns a building adjacent to the alley that is proposed to be vacated. It is a relatively short alley and a narrow alley. My building is at the corner of Vignes Street and the mouth of the alley. The alley runs between Vignes and Santa Fe. We have a very narrow building, very narrow face on Vignes Street. It extends a long way into the alley, at least halfway into the alley, and it is a building that has a footprint that consumes the entire lot. I'm concerned that if this alley is vacated, it will prevent us from accessing both ends of the alley, which is from Vignes to Santa Fe. And the problem that we have is that the Daily Journal owns both sides of the alley at the Santa Fe end of the alley, which would mean that if it is vacated, the Daily Journal could put a gate in the middle of the alley and prevent us from accessing Santa Fe. Because the alley is so narrow, we would need access all the way through for fire protection, deliveries, maintenance, all of those things. It's impossible to turn a fire truck around in the center of that alley because it is so narrow. So what I propose is that if the alley is vacated, there be a condition that there would be mutual reciprocal easements which would allow free access of the buildings that are located on the alley, so that we will have the appropriate access and protection for safety and other purposes. And I've submitted a letter that indicates my concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience this morning. That letter has been submitted, and we'll add that to the record. Are there any members who wish to be heard on this item? Item 3? Okay. If not, we have the recommendation before us. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Okay. That is approved. Next item, please, called special.
Item 8, called special for cards.
Item 8, we have a card from Erica Diaz to come forward. And thank you for your patience as well. Good morning.
Good morning. Erica Diaz on behalf of J.P. Morgan Chase Bank. I'd first like to address the council to explain that my client is not the title owner of the property at the moment and is not in possession of the property and does not have the legal right to enter the property to abate any city code violations or other nuisances. My client did not cause the violations that are the subject matter of the lien proposed to be imposed upon the property. However, in the event or if and when the property is foreclosed upon, my client will ultimately be liable for any liens imposed against the property. We understand that the city must be compensated for its expenditures in abating the code violations and are not in opposition to the actual cost of those expenditures. However, we respectfully request that the council waive the 40% administrative fee, which is authorized by city ordinances and is discretionarily imposed, and we wish that it be waived because it is in essence a penalty against the property that my client will ultimately be responsible for paying for. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members who wish to be heard on this item? Okay. If not, we have this proposed lien before us. If we please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Okay. That is approved. Next item, please.
Item 19 and 35 will call special by Councilmember Rosendahl.
Okay. Mr. Rosendahl, items 1935.
Thank you, Mr. President. Come on up there. You know, we know in the council here, at least I've learned after being here 5 years, that patience is a virtue. And that you need to be patient, you need to be focused, and you need to stay on topic, on subject. 4 years ago, I put a motion in. Ms. Smith kindly seconded it, and then we moved it through the process. And it was basically a motion, it's not easy to be green. And we created a joint task force from Planning and Department of Building and Safety, Bureau of Sanitation, to investigate and provide recommendations on 2 items: the status of efforts to increase recycling throughout the city, and the feasibility of requiring recycling chutes for future multifamily and commercial buildings. 2 new changes in the zoning code will occur, and it's in the ordinance. First, any new multiple family or commercial development designed to include a trash chute shall be required to provide a recycling chute as well. And second, all existing multifamily or commercial developments with a trash chute adding floor space of 25% or more will be required to include a recycling chute. Now, this is a small but important change in the current code. Recycling is the name of the game for everything, especially when we get out of the single family and we have the blue bin. We know all about that. It's the multifamily and commercial. So we started this process 4 or 5 years ago. Tell us where we are today and what the ordinance my colleagues and I hopefully will approve.
Okay, thank you. I'm Tom Rothman from the Planning Department. I think you pretty much covered most of the aspects of the ordinance. At your direction and the task force of It's Not Easy Being Green, we examined ways that the zoning code could help increase the city's recycling efforts. We did note that recycling chutes were not mentioned in the zoning code, but we did require separate rooms for recycling and for common trash. So what we did was we removed the requirement to have separate rooms, and we do require now that when a building, a commercial building or a multifamily building is planning on putting in a trash chute, they must also put in a recycling chute. And removing the separation of these rooms, we think will remove the disincentive to recycle in these buildings. So we're doing two things. We're actually doing three things. We're actually putting definitions in the zoning code of what a trash chute and a recycling chute is. We're also requiring recycling chutes and then removing the requirement to separate these rooms to incentivize recycling.
I think it's great. And what about a structure that, has parking in it and has had the normal trash set up? Will they be required going forward to put some kind of a recycling program in place, even if they don't have a chute?
Well, I know, not through this zoning ordinance. This is the land use ordinance only, but I believe that the Bureau of Sanitation is beginning to implement programs for multifamily buildings in general.
Because you have some 700 private haulers, right, that pick up garbage from these groups?
At least.
And how much work are we doing with them to do separation and recycling?
We're working very closely with them. I'll bring in the Bureau of Sanitation at a different time to talk about the details.
Yeah. Would you let them know, Bureau of Sanitation, that we'd like an update from them on how we're doing with those 700 private haulers and what mechanisms are they using to do recycling as well? Yes, this is a step in the right direction, folks. If we want to be the greenest city in the world, this is one way in which we can do it with multifamily and commercial. I obviously ask for an aye vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Let's go ahead then on these two items, if there's no other speakers, and open the roll. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Those are approved. Thank you very much. Next item is called special, please.
Item 37, called special for cards.
Okay, 37, Mr. Sachs, if you'd like to come forward. And you can stay forward when you're done with the comments on that. We'll go right to item 38 as well for your card.
Thank you. Good morning again, Arnold Sachs. My reason for holding this again was based on the article that appeared in the newspaper regarding the property that was under the auspices of the CRA in Hollywood that was purchased for several $1 million, and he had sold it to the developer for like $500,000. So I want to know if there's any kind of guarantee or any kind of penalty that would allow that the city recover or at least get market development costs for this property from within this agreement, that the CRA doesn't have a fire sale to sell to one of its cronies. I'm also wondering, since this is occurring on Westchester redevelopment area, would that concern any of the property by the airport, and why the CRA would not be involved in that? You heard one of the commissioners speak about the property values going down, yet the airport was allocated $120 million to buy a parking lot for the proposed Green Line terminal at Atlawa. So if they have $120 million there, what is the situation with property values for the passengerway? And again, CRA involvement, what are guarantees that the city won't take a bath, which means the public won't take a bath with any kind of negotiations on this? We've seen from the results of the Hollywood fiasco that was a bath for public funds. Thank you. Item 37,
We'll go ahead.
you want to take the action?
We'll just open the roll, on 37, please. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
38, sir.
38, right in this first paragraph, that the CRA should have access to confidential employment data from firms located in downtown LA. Why would the CRA, why would you give out your confidential employment data of your staff members to the CRA if you ask for it? Because after all, this is a firm that does business in downtown LA. So maybe they'll need your staff members' confidential data so that they can plan on the future land uses and support further public investment and employment expansion in downtown LA. Take a look at the new police building that just opened up. What would have happened if they had planned for employment opportunities for the new correction facilities that open within the new facilities themselves? You have new correctional facilities that can't be opened because there's no employees available. Why would not the CRA be involved in that? That's employment opportunities in downtown. As downtown, you can get in downtown, right across the street from City Hall, and there's employment opportunities and gone for waste. Why would that be? You'll give out private persons' confidential data to the CRA. Man, talk about identity theft. Can you say identity theft?
Thank you. That'll close our comments on this item. This is actually state data for individual firms, not individual people, and we're not giving it out. It's a request for it from the state. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, called special, please.
Item 47, called special by Councilmember Weezer, and there are cards on that.
Okay, we'll take cards first on item 47. And we have first, and Julie Cronheim. After that will be Tanua Thrash. A very good morning to you.
Hi, I'm Anjali Cronheim, representing California Common Cause. Thanks for letting me speak today. So California Common Cause is committed to broadening California's electorate and improving access to voting for all citizens. Our extensive work on voter registration campaigns and election day research has demonstrated that all too often our voter registration process actually acts as a barrier to voter participation. In the 2008 general election, California experienced the largest voter turnout as well as the largest number of people, 700,098,332, casting provisional ballots because of uncertainty about their registration status. 82% of those provisional ballots were ultimately counted, but the county investment of staff, overtime, resources to these process was enormous. So one-stop voting will ensure that all eligible voters are able to cast a ballot on Election Day, even if they have not previously registered. So those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience. Tanua Thrash is next. After that is Clarissa Wu.
Good morning, council members. My name is Tanua Thrash, and I'm representing the Green Lining Institute, a statewide public policy organization committed to low-income communities of color throughout California. Today, we stand with our friends at Common Cause to say, support SB 1140 to promote one-stop voter registration. Some of my colleagues will talk about the fact that voter registration, same-day voter registration will alleviate some of the barriers that communities of colors face. But I want to also make sure you know about the high cost and the burden of processing provisional ballots that folks must cast if they're not sure about their registration status. We strongly believe that one-stop voting proposed under SB 1140 will result in significant improvements to California's voting procedures and a greater participation among California citizens. We have had conversations with registrars and county officials, and they say that the cost to implement one-stop voting program will be minimal in comparison to the benefits to all Californians voting. One-stop voting has the potential to increase our turnout, to level obvious demographic disparities in voting, and to decrease the use of provisional ballots. For all these reasons, we ask that you support SB 1140. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Clarissa Wu is next. After that is Arnold Sachs.
Good morning, council members. My name is Clarissa Wu, and I'm the policy manager at the ACLU of Southern California, a civil rights and civil liberties organization which represents about 45,000 members in the Southern California area. We work to protect and expand the rights guaranteed by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which lay out the guiding principles of our democratic government: freedom and equality for all. The ACLU supports SB 1140 and AB 1531 that would permit eligible citizens to register to vote during the 14-day period up to and including Election Day. We believe that a democracy's strength is derived from broad civic engagement and election participation, and we know that a barrier to voting is often merely the registration process. California has seen dismal voter participation in the recent years, with the exclusion of the statewide special election in 2003 and the November general election. And in most of these cases, many voters are compelled to participate due to the high, robust campaign activity leading up to those last 2 weeks to the election, when voter registration is no longer permitted. Many otherwise eligible citizens were turned away or processed as provisional voters. The state legislation that the City Council is considering today, SB 1140 and AB 1531, recognizes the reality that campaign communications peak in the last 2 weeks before elections and the voter registration period is closed. So this provides recourse for first-time voters to participate. One-step voting will allow citizens who are eligible to vote and meet all current requirements to cast a ballot even if they have decided to participate in an election when it was too late to register. So this change has the potential to increase both voter turnout and the percentage of cast ballots being counted. For all of these reasons, and on behalf of the ACLU of Southern California, I thank Councilmember Huizar and the council members who are bringing this resolution forward, and I urge you to support this resolution.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wu. Arnold Sachs is our next speaker. After that is Marcy Kukab. You have 1 minute left, sir?
Yes, thank you. I also believe the city has moved to increase vote by mail to alleviate some of the cost. I think that would be a much better way to go. I'd like to see, with the provisional ballots, it won't eliminate them totally because it allows people to vote outside their district to vote at any voting poll. So provisional ballots will still be a part of the process. But what I'd also like to see is that part of this law include a stipulation that the county registers implement a program to recycle the educational material they give out to the clerks that work the elections. I brought that up at the County Board of Supervisors that the materials given out, there are approximately, some years, 3 primaries in a year for the County of Los Angeles. In the state, at least 2. So that entitles giving out educational material numerous times. It's not recycled. It's a waste of funding. It needs to be brought up to save fund.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Marcy Kukab is next. After that is David Holtzman. Good morning.
Council member. My name is Marcy Kukab, and I'm the project coordinator for the California Participation Project. We provide resources, tools, and trainings to nonprofits in LA County to help them integrate civic participation into their ongoing work. And we're also part of a national network which works to expand the role of nonprofits in voting in elections. We support SB 1140 because one-stop voting will ensure that all eligible voters are able to cast a ballot on Election Day, even if they have not been previously registered. According to a 2008 report from our national partner, the Nonprofit Voter Engagement Network, states that have Election Day registration have had consistently higher voter participation rates even after adjusting for all turnout factors. Also, 5 of the 6 top turnout states in the 2008 presidential election are all EDR states that have Election Day registration. Overall, in the 2008 presidential election, states with Election Day registration average voter turnout 10 points higher than states without EDR. And this higher turnout in states with EDR is consistent with previous presidential election years. Election Day registration has proven successful in every state where it has been adopted. It also saves states money on processing and counting provisional ballots because far fewer provisional ballots are cast when voters can update their registration at their polling place. For all these reasons, the California Participation Project encourages you to support the resolution to support SB 1140. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kukab. David Holtzman is next, and then Sharon Byrne.
Mr. President, members of the council, good morning. David Holtzman, President, League of Women Voters of Los Angeles. The League of Women Voters encourages all people who are eligible to vote to register and to cast an informed vote in all elections. We believe that government should make registration and re-registration easy while assuring that the basic requirements of citizenship, age, and residency are met. SB 1140 and its companion bill would open up our registration process, which often presents a barrier to eligible voters. For example, one-stop voting would benefit people who move to a different county or who develop an interest in the election up to and including Election Day. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Sharon Byrne is our final speaker on this side.
Good morning. My name is Sharon Byrne, and I am from Santa Barbara, actually. I'm down here on behalf of Common Cause. I'm their deputy director. And for Councilman Rosendahl, I do fly out of LAX on a regular basis. So yes, there are an awful lot of regional people using your airport. I stand before you here today grateful to Councilman Huizar for showing great leadership in putting this resolution before you. This is statewide legislation. If it's passed, it would be mandated locally. It's a voting rights bill and is thus of great importance. We, as a democracy, and as a state that values democracy, need to remove every barrier and every impediment to citizens exercising their right to vote in this state. One could foresee a future where we register and vote by iPhone, or we vote on legislation as a state en masse rather than the expensive ballot proposition process we have today. But we're not at that future. We're still in this kind of steam-driven present, and we need to make voting much easier than it is today so the citizens can exercise their right to vote. This bill, SB 1140, gives us that one-stop voting. Our midterm and presidential election, barring the 2008 election, is typically poor in California. We rank about 47th in voter turnout, and yet we have the most number of seats in the House, and we have the largest population of all the states. Something's going on in the voting process that's not working for us. In the June primary of this year in Santa Barbara, as part of a Latino voter mobilization group, I drove 5 voters to the polls, all of whom thought they were registered to vote. It turned out 2 of them had been dropped from the rolls, even though they voted in the 2008 presidential election. Now, we could say that's a ding on the Santa Barbara County Registrar, and you'd be right, but it points to the fact that there's a problem. They had to register on the spot and cast provisional ballots. One-stop voting would have alleviated that kind of problem. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your activism. Thank you to all of our speakers for your good public comments. We'll now turn to Mr. Huizar.
Thank you, and I too want to thank the speakers for coming out today and supporting the council, acting to support 2 pieces of legislation that will help to improve our democracy that we have. And folks, we have all heard about the dismal voting participation rates that there are in California, and it is not as well, probably even worse here in Los Angeles. Research have said that the largest and easiest way to clear hurdles to voting is to get people registered. And at a recent forum I held on how we can increase voter participation, many of the experts in the field pointed to allowing for same-day registration. The 2 bills are before the Assembly Appropriations Committee in Sacramento, and these 2 bills would do exactly just that, allow for same-day registration. Past concerns about tampering should be resolved. The state is actually looking into getting ready to launch a voter database with real-time updated information. Moreover, voters will fill out provisional ballots to give election officials time to make sure they are valid. This is a small step, and a very important one to improve voter participation here in the state of California and Los Angeles. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Mr. Rosendahl is next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'm getting old on this issue. I've been talking about it for about 40 years now. Same-day registration, same-day voting, making it easier for people to participate in the political process, not difficult. It's a no-brainer, and obviously if Sacramento provides leadership, we'll have this statewide. So thanks, Jose, for moving it forward through your public forums and your committee meetings. This is one step. Just like, unfortunately, that campaign finance business didn't happen on the ballot, how ridiculous that was. But this is a good, healthy step in the right direction of greater participation in the political process. Obviously, vote aye for this. Thank you, Mr. President.
We have Mr. Zine, Ms. Hahn, Mr. LeBond, Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Parks, and Mr. Kretz next. Mr. Zine.
Whoa. I guess it's going to be...
Anybody speaking against? Just
timely, so I'm speaking I have some questions. Number one, the Help America Vote Act of 2002 mandated that they create this master database for voters. Who's creating that? How much is the cost? Who's going to pay for it? If someone could answer that question. In addition, it says the database is expected to be fully operational by 2013. The question is, who's going to pay to implement that, since the state is in great financial, $19 billion, I think, behind their doing living wage or prevailing wage or some substantial amount of money, or less than substantial, to the state workers. Furloughs in the city of Los Angeles. I'm questioning who's going to pay for this, and if it's expected to be operational in 2013, how can we expect it to be operational if there's no funds to make it happen? Mr. President, does anyone can answer those questions on this matter, please?
I think Ms. Fung from Common Cause may be able to address that. Is that
or maybe our city representatives can answer those questions.
All right. Hold on. We're going to hear from the CLA.
John Wickham with the CLA's office. I understand that that's a state database, and the state is working on that database. As soon as that information is available from the state, then the counties would be able to implement that system.
Where does the state have the funds to do this?
They walk up from the city clerk. We don't know that.
Okay,
we just know that we do not have to pay for it. That's all we know.
I know. We don't have to pay for it. Does the county have to pay for it, because we are part of the county tax base?
It's a state.
The state has money to America Vote Act funds.
The state has money, according to Kathy.
How about the state's $19 billion in debt?
Mr. Zahn, would you like to hear from Ms. Fang?
Well, I'd like to hear from someone.
Who do you want to hear from the CLA? Who do you want to hear from? It's your time, so why don't you direct who you want to question?
Well, I'd like to hear from the CLA. They're the representatives that we have to get the information. And also, it's expected by 2013. And I don't have any opposition against people voting. I support that. But the reality is, who's going to pay for it? It's expected. What if it doesn't happen in 2013? Then what are we going to do? And we have a law that says we should have it.
Yeah, that's a federal law, and the state's required to comply with that law. The state's going to be allocating the money despite whatever this budgetary concern is. So what we can do is check on the state budget and see where this falls in that budget and what funding is available.
I think we need to find that out to make sure that what we're going to vote on is actually going to happen, and not just something that we think may happen. Also, the neighborhood councils, which we support, the dismal turnout of neighborhood councils. When we have community activity and elections in the neighborhoods, people aren't voting there. I know our local elections, about 16% of the turnout for our local elections. So we need to increase the number of voters. And I don't have any problem against increasing the number of voters. I want to make sure we're doing it in a proper way, and we have the funds to make sure it's going to be there, and not just some idea that doesn't have the financial backing to make it happen, because I'm sure this will be a very expensive multi-million-dollar operation once it gets established.
It is contingent upon the VoteCal being operational. So it doesn't go into effect until VoteCal is operational.
Okay, and that's supposed to be done by 2013.
And that's supposed to be done by 2013. So if it's in any way delayed, then one-stop voting would be delayed.
Can we get some answers to that? Have we done any research to find out if, in fact, they're on target to make that happen? Or because of the state budget, when they're releasing people from prison, et cetera, I don't know how they're going to find funds if they don't have funds to pay state employees to do the job they're doing.
Again, it's a federal mandate. They have to do it. It's not something that's...
Well, if they don't have the money, how are they going to do it? That's the question. The federal mandate, the state mandates, but they don't give us money to implement the program. The federal mandate without the appropriation, or the state mandate to us without an appropriation, we throw our hands up and say, well, folks, we can't afford to do it. That's what I'm trying to find. Is it real, or is it just wishful thinking?
Well, we believe it's real, but I understand that you want some hard and cold facts, which we will get for you.
Thank you.
Mr. Labange is our next speaker.
Thank you. I got the question answered by the League of Women Voters.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think the same questions I have that Dennis was talking about. And the one thing, it seems like it's premature if we're going to support something that is not in place and we don't quite know how the system is going to work when it's in place. And we've seen federal mandates before. There's a mandate in the state government about the number of prisoners that are in state prison, except, if they don't have the money, they don't address it, or they release prisoners. So I'm just leery about the whole issue of what the state's involvement, even though it's mandated, what the cost, and I just sense that there's
it's just an open bed for corruption of people misusing the system. It's tough enough even today to ensure that there's not corruption in the voting system. So I just wondered, in the sense of, from the CLA's perspective, how does all this come together as it relates to what's being proposed and what is actuality, and how do we have safeguards as it relates to the corruption aspects?
In terms of the funding, I was just informed that the state has received $35 million from the federal government. It's in the bank. So the state has cash on hand, $35 million, to pay for the implementation of this program. So they're moving forward in terms of developing this database with money that's from the federal government. So there should not be any requirement for state funding to put this together.
But we've seen in the city, we spend $35 million on a
information system, yeah.
Information system, and it's a drop in the bucket. We're talking about statewide system, $35 million. That may get them through a county or two, but I'm just saying that this doesn't appear that it's reasonably thought out as it relates to moving in that direction. What about the security aspect?
I would have to look at the requirements that they have in the federal law and the characteristics of the RFP that the state is putting out to see how they look at those details and how they're incorporated into their search for a contractor to put this database together. So I don't have that information available. I can take a
Is the legislation moving in advance of us getting that information?
The legislation has passed out of the policy committees. It's in the appropriations committees of the Senate and the Assembly. Both houses are on recess until August.
Okay, and then the issue, so until you see the RFP, you won't know about the security elements?
We would have to do some research on that to see how the security elements are built into the system.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hahn.
Thank you. Well, I just want to thank everyone who's continued to push this effort towards fruition, and I just wanted to stand and offer my support for the idea of same-day registration. I think it's important move forward for California, and as was said, many people aren't even focusing on the election until the last couple of weeks, which is when we cut off the opportunity for people to register to vote. I think anything we can do to make it easier, to remove obstacles, to encourage more people to participate is right. I particularly am always concerned about our young people, those who have just turned 18, and getting them involved in the voting process. I am always asking for an increased level of civics instruction in our high schools. I think every 18-year-old who can should be registered to vote, but many times they have just turned 18, they've missed the cutoff point, and then they're not able to vote in a very important election. And I think once young people begin to vote, it becomes a habit. It becomes something that they really believe in. They will be lifelong voters. I think voter participation is the next step. We have a lot of people registered to vote who never bother to vote, and that's really unfortunate. There are countries that we see now where people really put their lives on the line, literally, to stand in line for hours to cast a vote for democracy and for freedom and for a representative type of government. So I think this is a good idea. I think we should push forward. It's unfortunate it's not going to be enacted until 2013. Is that what you're saying? Because I think it's the next move we need to take. People who want to get registered to vote, who want to vote, on the same day that we're holding our elections, I think it's appropriate, it is fitting, it is right, and I think I would tend to believe that those voters are going to be very engaged and are going to be continued, again, to be lifelong voters. So I applaud all of you who have been pushing this forward. Thank you for your diligence, your perseverance, and we want to stand in support of these bills in Sacramento, and hopefully they'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Mr. Koretz is our next speaker.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Rosendahl. This is a no-brainer. We have an embarrassing level of participation in our elections. Anything we can do that increases participation, we absolutely should do, and this will have a dramatic impact. So I don't know what all the debate's about. Let's just do it.
Thank you, Mr. Koretz. Mr. Smith.
Thank you. I have one question, because it's my understanding that when you just said it went through the legislative, the Assembly already gone through and into the Senate, my discussion this morning with one of the legislative staffs in Sacramento was that the bill that was originally introduced in the Assembly, 1140, is not this bill. The original bill had to do with contracts in the state of California and nothing to do with this voting rights bill. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so the bill that you have before you is not the bill that went through the legislature unanimously. The bill that's before you is something totally different that never was vetted in the Assembly. It's never seen the light of day. It was a last-minute change in the Senate, which Sacramento is real good at doing those switcheroos where they get a bill through one house and then slip it in language in the other house and change it totally. This has never seen the light of day. We've never analyzed it. The questions Mr. Parks and Mr. Zine have asked have never really been asked. So, members of the council, I think it's really foolish on our part to be supporting a bill that was not the bill that was introduced. And that what you have before you today has not been through a legitimate committee process in Sacramento. And finally, the answers aren't there. I suggest that we move this back to committee, because the legislature is not going to act on it right now anyway, and get the answers that Mr. Zine, questions that he asked, answers those questions, and Mr. Parks, find out what it's going to cost, how it's going to work, and secondly, let the conference committees deal with this bill for a little bit, because it's never seen the light of day in the Assembly. So I think it's wrong for us to be supporting a bill that didn't start off this way, ended up completely mutated from what it originally was, and we don't know what the costs are. This is wrong.
Is that a motion to send it back?
Yeah, it is my motion to send it back to committee.
Second. All right, that's seconded by Ms. Perry. Mr. Krikorian? And Mr. Zine after that. He gets the third for the record. Mr. Krikorian.
Well, just for clarifications, we were just checking the legislative record, Mr. Smith. The Portantino bill, AB 1531, was apparently a gut amendment. SB 1140, Senator Yee's bill, passed through the Senate as an elections reform bill, was vetted in the Senate, was heard as it is in the Policy Committee, came before the Assembly Elections Committee. The author took amendments at the recommendation of the staff of the Elections Committee and the Assembly. So this bill, the Yee bill anyway that's before us, has gone through the complete legislative process through one House and through the Policy Committee in the second House, and is now before the Appropriations Committee. So, and that is in fact the bill that has been improved to include various security measures to make sure that it is not going to take effect until VoteCal is implemented and so forth. So I recommend that we move forward on this, at least with regard to SB 1140. I think this is a good measure which will advance our continuing efforts to try to broaden our electoral base, to try to empower people to take control of their government, and I think that this is a step in the direction that was started when we eliminated the poll tax and literacy tests and the other barriers to voting that have gotten in people's way. This is another good step in that direction. It doesn't raise security concerns, because if someone can't validate their place of residence at the time of the election, then they can only vote by provisional ballot. So we'll have the exact same protections that we have now with the provisional ballot system. So I think this is a good measure. When we moved from a 29-day deadline to a 14-day deadline for registration, the world didn't fall apart. There wasn't a rampant increase in fraud. There wasn't increases in costs. This is just the next step in the right direction to make it easier for people to fully participate in democracy, and I think we should move forward with it.
Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you. I would move to withdraw the Portantino bill and keep then the Yee one, just to clarify that, since that's empty. Would that reflect that, Mr. Krikorian? Okay. Mr. Krikorian seconds that, so that we're supporting the Yee bill, which is the one. I'm very supportive of this. As folks know, for many years, other states that have done it, democracy has not fallen apart. It has actually been successful. We do voter eligibility same day here in our own city elections for our neighborhood councils. I know some might say, well, that's not a model to point to, but I think the point is that we want more participation. We want more involvement. We want to have people there, and I think the protections are here in place. We have very little to fear. This should be a nonpartisan issue. I know it sometimes becomes partisan, but I ask that we withdraw that, support the Yee bill, and let's get this done. Many of us have been waiting a long, long time for this.
Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. As a resolution, I've been listening to this debate and discussion, and I stand to support my colleagues, Councilor Corey and Councilor Garcetti, and all the efforts from Councilor Huizar in getting us to this place. Everything we can do to be more inclusive is a positive in my mind. Anything we can do to allow for the type of empowerment that these bills strive to achieve is something that we should be pushing for. The questions that have been raised, we can answer them as the process continues to unveil. In the meantime, as a resolution, we could take a stand and be strong in that notion of inclusivity and making sure democracy works. So I would support that direction in Councilor Corey and Councilor Garcetti's latest version of our action, and follow up with all the details that we need to follow up with to make sure that we're being methodical as well. Thank you.
Mr. Huizar?
Thank you, Madam President. I know there's other speakers as well. I just want to urge us to move forward today. I think we have enough information before us, and bills in Sacramento are constantly gutted and changed and put different concepts in there. So if we keep the Yee bill in there, which was the original intended, we added the Portantino bill because he is a local legislator pushing the same concepts and ideas, so we wanted a local legislator to support. But if we pull that out,
It was gutted and amended to mirror the Yee bill, so I don't...
They're identical, but if it's easier for people to agree.
I don't think it brings anybody along, so I'll just keep both.
Okay,
I withdraw
they're identical.
I withdraw my motion. Thank you.
Okay, they're identical, and so we could keep them both in there, that's fine. And colleagues, research has shown that if you have same-day voter registration, you're going to bring in a wider variety of voters, and that's what democracy is about, to bring people who haven't been part of the process into the process, and that's good for democracy. We have obstacles. Nothing is easy. Change is not easy, but the concerns I've heard today are things that will be and can be addressed in the future. It is not a do or die today, so we have enough information before us. I ask that we move forward today and let the legislators in Sacramento know that Los Angeles is fully behind that. So even if they get back in session in August, those who are advocating for this could know that LA is behind them and start moving forward with that support. Thank you.
Mr. Koretz.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out on the Portantino bill, there's nothing wrong in the legislative process with having a 2-year bill that's gutted and amended. Often you'll wind up with 2 bills on the same general subject that are very similar to make it more likely that one passes. And so I assume it's just a strategic approach. As I understand it, the Portantino bill, after it was amended, has been through several committees, so it's also been vetted. So there's no reason to support one and not the other. And now, my understanding is they're now virtually identical, so there's no problem with the Portantino bill.
Mr. Krikorian.
Withdraw his motion. Thank you. I'm done.
You good? Okay, great. All right, Mr. Clerk, what do we have before us?
There was a motion on the floor by Councilmember Smith to send the matter back to committee.
And are there any other motions pending?
The other motion was withdrawn, so if this motion does not pass, then the matter would be before
Okay,
council.
open the roll on Mr. Smith's motion, please. Close the roll.
Oh, okay.
Tabulate the vote.
6 ayes, 7 noes.
So that does not pass. Now the resolution as presented is before council.
All right. You can clear the board, and then I'll reopen the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote. Tell me what? Close the roll.
10 ayes, 3 noes.
Okay. Next order of business.
Madam President, there is a special one, and the city attorney will speak to the findings.
Since the posting of today's agenda, the LAPD has notified council staff of the need to offer a reward for information leading to the arrest of suspects in the July 4th shooting death of 14-year-old Daisy Garcia at 10 p.m. at 1342 Toberman Street in the Pico Union community. Immediate action is required to apprehend the suspect for the safety of the community. Council must first make findings pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2 before considering the substantive motion.
All right, let's open the roll on the findings, please. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Mr. Reyes?
Thank you, colleagues. I want to be opportunistic with this time, and hopefully those folks who are watching or listening, especially in the Pico Union area, if you can help us identify those who committed such a heinous crime on July 4th. 14-year-old Daisy Garcia has passed away because of gunshot wounds. 4 or 5 people approached the family where they're celebrating and actually fire shots into the family celebration, and she dies. We need your help. Please step forward. It's a $50,000 reward, and the community will be much safer for it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. There are no further speakers in the queue. Please open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Next order of business.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Motions are posted and referred.
There are excuses on the desk. Councilmember Perry requests to be excused to leave at 11:30 on August 18th and for the entire meeting September 7th, both for city business and both meet council policy.
Without objection.
And Councilmember Hahn requests to be excused to arrive at 11:30 on July 14th for city business. That also meets council policy.
Without objection.
That clears the desk.
All right, members, are there any announcements? Members, are there any announcements? Any announcements? Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd just like to announce to the community that at least in 2 parks within the 8th District, the Summer Night Lights program kicks off today, July the 7th. One at Martin Luther King Recreation Center at 3900 block of Southwestern, and also at Van Ness, Jackie Tatum Van Ness Recreation Center. That would be at, also both of them start at 7 p.m. to midnight. So both of those programs kick off today.
You can tell about all of them. There's also Jordan Downs, Nickerson, Imperial Courts, and Halldale Recreation Centers also kicking off tonight. So a lot of good summer night light programs happening this summer.
Mr. Reyes.
I'd like to also echo Cypress Park Playground and Highland Park. And these have been areas that have been very active in ways that we wish they wouldn't be. So hopefully the youth will come and enjoy these programs.
A number of locations throughout the valley as well. Just want to thank Recreation Parks and the Mayor's office and all of us for doing this because it's important, very important program.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Any other announcements? Can we all please rise for adjourning motions? Any adjourning motions? Mr. Labange.
Members, yesterday I went to lunch at Felipe's. I was standing in line, and the fellow in front of me who I don't really know well said, "Hey, your friend died." And I was shocked to learn that Tom Buckley, some of you may have met him over the years. For many years, he worked for Southern Pacific Railroad, then for Burlington Northern Santa Fe. He was the face of Union Station for many, many, many years. Grew up in Los Angeles, went to Santa Clara University, had a big family, loved the city, was a good friend of Huell Hauser, who also would take Huell to the insides of the history of the railroad in Southern California. He would call me about every other month, and I had spoken to him recently. Tom Buckley was a great man who was a great friend of Los Angeles, a great friend of civic enterprise. May he rest in peace.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Any other adjourning motions? All right, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.